So looking way back on your time in university, but how did that experience, university and U Sports, set you up for the road that you're on now?
Yeah, so definitely the most valuable thing that I got out of my youth sport experience was the people that I met along the way. And I think we've all heard the quote, like your network is your net worth. And I'm just thinking back to how many people I met along the way, even outside of basketball players, like hockey players, football players. There's so many people, mentors. Like there's so many people that I met along the way through sport that I'm still connected with now, and they kind of unlocked other opportunities after sport and allowed me to kind of enable myself to give back into the community the way that I have so far. So the sport is fine. Like the sport is great. I love playing basketball at the time, and I still coach and still pretty involved in basketball. But the most valuable thing that I've gotten out of the experience is just the people that I've met, the connections that I've made, and the opportunities they unlock for me, and just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other kind of along the way. That's kind of how I just approach my life outside of sports. Just meet people, connect with people, share experiences, and kind of like the iron sharpens iron approach, and just bouncing ideas off of people with similar mindsets and approaches as you.
Can you think of those your student athlete experiences and talk about how important they were, but also any lessons you learned in that time that you're using now?
Yeah, so the biggest lessons for me, for sure, from the student athlete experience is just learning how to deal with like the wins and losses of just sport, but in life. And the reason why I say this is because obviously in life, like things are going good sometimes, or things are going bad sometimes, and it really boils down to how you handle each of those situations. And the one of the things that I kind of look back on, and being a university athlete, and I played on teams that were ranked second in the country, and I played on teams where I haven't made playoffs, right? So I look at that, and it's like completely different parts of my career. I spent winning and I spent losing, but at the end of the day, you still gotta lace them up and play every day. And I just kind of carry that through the life, right? Like even sometimes when if I'm doing something in work, or something going on in family and stuff like that, like sometimes things are great and then sometimes things are terrible, right? And it's like you learning how to deal with your emotions as a kid in university, and learning that there's a lesson when you win a game, and there's still learning to be had, and you gotta, we won the game today, but we got to come back and be better tomorrow, versus we lost the game. Why did we lose? How can we get better? How can we dig ourselves out of this hole? It's kind of like going through that emotionally as a student athlete, and really applying that to life with work and family and whatever else kind of going on. That's just kind of a lesson that I learned throughout my entire career as a student athlete. And I just kind of apply that philosophy to life. When things are going bad, figure out why are they not going bad? How can I change? What can I change to adjust and pivot, and dig myself out of a hole? Or, if I win or something good happens in my life, it's important to celebrate that, but also continue that momentum, or else you can become complacent. And yeah, that's kind of the main takeaway that I've learned from my student athlete experience.
I was wondering if I could get your personal cell number so that you could talk to my son, because last night he lost and he was really pissed off. So I could really
Yeah,
use your help on that
yeah,
one.
absolutely. I mean,
It's
even
true
like
though.
sometimes things aren't fair, right? Like, and I think sometimes we get caught up in the situation of like, when something unfair happens to you, like you feel so much, hate or resentment and negativity when you feel like you've done something unfair, like, or something unfair has happened to you. And I'll give you an example from my playing days, but my first year at university, first year student athlete, Acadia, we were ranked second in the country, I believe, or oh, actually, no, we won AUS. Yeah, we won the AUS championship, and we won our conference, and we beat Santa Fe in the finals. And so when we went to nationals, we actually ended up getting the 8th seed, and Santa Fe got the 5th seed. So in result, we had to play Carleton, who we all know is a powerhouse in basketball. And so we won our conference, and we got the 8th seed and had to play Carleton first game. And Santa Fe, who we beat in the AUS finals, got the 5th seed, and they had to play Concordia the first round. So it was just kind of like, and then like, and I'm not saying this as like a knock of what happened, but like I think we all know like that was kind of something was wonky there, because a year after that, U Sport, it would have been called CIS at the time, came back and changed the rules now. So now if you win your conference, you can't be seeded anything lower than 6, I believe. So it was kind of like, that was an opportunity where the league learned and the league made adjustments to make the competition and the fairness a little bit more balanced. But it's like being a first year kid going through that at, 18 years old, it felt like it was unfair and a lot of emotions going into that. And we feel like we would have done better if, we would have been seated higher. And you kind of have this feeling of unfairness, but at the end of the day, you got to come back and still compete, perform the next year and years after that. And I look back at it now and it's all kind of small peanuts, right? But to me, it's just kind of, you look at that situation as like there was some learning that happened and there's some growing that happened as a league. And it felt like we were done unfairly, but at the end of the day, it's overall growth and it's overall improvement across the board. And I think, again, just when something unfair happens in life, it's like you can't dwell on it, you can't sulk about it. You just got to figure out how can you just continue to progress. So that's just a little story that I share that's more relevant to my student athlete experience.
Why was a Canadian university best choice for you?
The Canadian, so it comes down to family, like the family feeling. So my personal experience, going to Acadia, small town of Wolfville, but I think there's about a population of about 4,000 people. That family experience and the small community vibe, that's what I'm used to. So like I'm from North Preston, Nova Scotia. Again, the population of North Preston is about 4,000 people. It's Canada's largest Black community in terms of like concentration of Black people living in a community. And the vibe of my community. So like when you're driving to North Preston, before you get there, there's like a 5 to 8 minute long windy road. And the thing that my community is known for is that everybody that drives on that road, everybody waves. So when you're driving, you like everybody that you pass, you put your hand up and you wave to somebody. So if you don't wave, that's usually a sure tell that you're not from the community. So that's like the dead giveaway if you don't wave back. But it was kind of, so that's kind of where I'm from. And then, to go to a small town of Wolfville, even though it's not a primarily Black community, it's still a small, tight-knit community. So for me to go from a small community, of 4,000 people, and then go to another small community of approximately 4,000 people as well. The thing that is kind of known in Wolfville is that, like, when you're walking in the street, every time you walk by somebody says hi to you, they speak to you. So it was kind of like that family feeling allowed me to kind of step out of my element from me leaving my community, leaving home, not being with my parents anymore, and kind of taking the plunge as this young student athlete and not having that, support system right in my proximity. But it was a familiar feeling with the small community, small, tight-knit vibe. So even though I did switch communities for 5 years, and it came to the point where I ended up living in Wolfville. I wasn't coming back home to North Preston anymore. I just stayed in Wolfville for the entire summer because I loved the vibe, and I was, able to, lock in and commit to myself. But I think that was the best choice for me because it allowed me to kind of progress in my life and take a jump in my life, but also have that familiar feeling of a small community and family, which I might not have gotten if I would have went to the States somewhere to play D1 or whatever.
Right. Well, great. I want to go to there now. I got to drive.
Yeah,
I want to drive down that road.
absolutely.
What's greatest is always a tricky word. So to say who had the greatest influence on you, it's like picking your favorite kid. But talk a
Yeah.
bit about some of the people who had a great influence on you.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. Like, picking the greatest
Yeah.
influence is tough. And especially it's tough because, I have so many people who influence my life in different ways, right? So like I have mentors that influence my life professionally, and I've had people who help me in my student athlete career. So, for the topic of the conversation in terms of my student athlete experience, like probably one of the greatest influences on me, and he passed away like a few years ago on Christmas Day, but his name is Bruce Finney. And he's in Acadia legend. And, you know, the reason why he's such an influential person on my student athlete experience was because he was one of the first people that really made me realize that use your time in school and your time as a student athlete to network and connect with people. So one of the lessons he's always taught me was like, you know, your first two years as a student athlete, Shaq, you just kind of come into the gym, you put your headphones on, you stretch, you don't really talk to anybody, you just kind of in the zone. But he was like, try actually sitting in the stands with some of the alumni and talking to the alumni and getting to know people and just connecting with people, because at the end of the day, the alumni, most of the alumni are coming to the games to watch you guys play, and they're fans, and you know, they're willing to help and support you in whatever capacity. And so, you know, he was one of the first alumni during my student athlete experience that I became close with, and I bounced ideas off of him. You know, when I graduated university, he invited me to go to the Acadia Alumni Gala where I met my future employer, and that kind of snowballed my career. So when it came to like influence and my perspective on networking and meeting people, you know, Bruce Finney is a huge influence in that. And you know, he just kind of changed my overall approach. When it comes to life, you know, when it comes to life and influences in my life, it definitely is my parents. You know, they've always made sure that, you know, I had everything I need, and I looked at the world in a positive light. And, you know, and then I say, you know, with in the same breath that I say my parents' name, I gotta say my two daughters, Zayla and Kinsley. So they're 4 and 15 months. But, you know, when I found out Zayla was on the way, so Zayla's 4, and, you know, I graduated 2016, so you can do the math. So when I found out that Zayla was on the way, I was finishing up my last semester at school and finishing my last semester as a student athlete. So that was a scary time in my life, because I'm like, you know, 23, 24 years old, about to graduate university. And then my daughter's on the way, and, you know, I didn't have a job lined up yet. And, you know, I didn't even walk across the stage yet. So that was just kind of a scary time. And, you know, I look back at where I'm at now in my career, and, you know, how, you know, vibrant and, you know, beautiful my daughters are now. Like, it's just kind of goes back to what I said before. Like, if everything's just going to figure itself out, and, you know, she influences the way I just kind of look at life, to just see how, you know, beautiful and vibrant she is. But like, when my mindset was when I first seen that I had some hurdles to jump when as a student athlete. But here I am now. So I kind of look at them and I'm like, you know, they influence a lot of, you know, even how I tackle my next day is a lot comes to those, you know, 3 groups of people.
That's awesome. Talk about same thing, greatest accomplishment. I realize that that's, again, don't be intimidated or whatever by the word greatest, but
Yeah.
what are some of the accomplishments that you're proud of?
Yeah, so you know, I've done a lot of projects in the community. You know, there's some awards that I won for the projects that I've done, and I look at those things. I'm like, you know, I'm proud of myself for doing those things. But definitely, my greatest accomplishment to date is, you know, finding my purpose, and that is helping people, right? And the reason why I say that is because, you know, like, you know, you can get an award for something, and the novelty of getting the award feels good for a moment and whatnot. And then at the end of the day, you got to go live your life and still do things with your life. But for me, like, and this is kind of why I'm so like, I'm super happy. I'm super happy with my life and the trajectory my life is taking right now. And it's because I feel like I found my purpose, and that's helping people. So, you know, looking back at all the projects that I've done in the community, some of the volunteer work that I've done, and even my job now. So my current job, I'm a recruiter. So, you know, I'm a headhunter recruiter. So I'm helping people find jobs all day long. Everything goes back to helping people. And, you know, me finding that purpose really just allows me to say, you know what, I have enough, because I found my purpose, versus if I didn't really find my purpose was, and, you know, you're trying to find a job that makes you money, and you're trying to find out, you know, what, you know, gets you up in the morning and stuff like that. I'm super blessed because I found something that does everything for me. It pays me, allows me to help people, gives me some challenges. But at the end of the day, I'm still helping people in every aspect of my life. So my greatest accomplishment is because I know that all my decisions that I'm going to make in the future are going to tie back to this purpose, is finding my purpose. And I strongly believe that my purpose is helping people.
That's an inspiring answer. Well done. Um, and I was reading about the basketball court and a lot of these things you've done. How
Yeah.
how do you give back to your community? Talk a bit about that, and then why.
Yeah, so how I give back to my community is, so the main thing that I did when I graduated was, building the basketball court in North Preston. So, that was a $350,000 project that I kind of hold close to my heart because I formulated the idea, I came up with the fundraising tactics, I presented to the local council. I kind of literally developed that project from start to finish. And then, I guess the best thing about the project, not only does it give access to the kids in the community to always have access to sport and play basketball whenever they want, but most of the local contracting work in the community was done by contractors in the community. So it was that was a nice project for me because, I fundraised the money and I came up with the plan. And then also to have local contractors, kind of keep that money in the community and have them kind of do the project for us. That was kind of a rewarding thing. So that's kind of how I gave back to the community. And, I guess the reason why I did the basketball court is because, I come from North Preston. I see how important basketball is in the community.
Mhm.
But my idea and my hypothesis was, I want to use sport to keep kids engaged and then integrate some educational components to sport to really, make sure that they get what they want out of sport. I've seen too many people use sport or play sport and go to the next level and fail or not know what's next in their career. So I guess, me, embarking on that journey of developing the North Preston basketball court actually ended up me founding a nonprofit organization called the Futures Program. So what we do at the Futures Program, we identify student athletes who are labeled as elite or considered elite or getting ready to go to, youth sport next year or college or D1. And we bring them into our nonprofit organization and we use basketball. And then we dig deeper on helping them find their purpose, right? So it kind of goes back to what I said before about my accomplishment is finding my purpose. And really we dig deep on like, what is your purpose? How do you identify outside of basketball? Because, I find, and this is kind of, I think after connecting with people, I found that this was just a student athlete issue. This is not a basketball issue. This is not a North Preston issue. This is something that student athletes in general struggle with. And that is, how do I identify myself outside of sport? And it's easy to fall into that trap when you're playing sport at an elite level from like the age of 6 or 8 all the way until you're 24 or 25. Is like, what else are you supposed to know outside of sport? So, the nonprofit that I founded, we really bring in these elite level basketball players, and we sit them down and was like, what are you good at? What do you love? How can you make money from it? And we really try to get them to come up with this purpose statement of, I'm Shaquille Smith and my purpose is helping people. Now it's like, okay, you like helping people. How can you help people? Here are some jobs that allow you to help people, recruiting or a doctor or a lawyer. And how can you make money from these certain things? So it's really like trying to take these elite level athletes, getting them to think a little bit more about their longer career plan before they go to university, before they go to college, because those times are going to be used to find that career path, and trying to connect them to kind of an end goal as they continue to progress in sport and then transition to the sport at the same time. So that's the North Preston basketball court is amazing. And that's a project that I hold true to my heart, and it's going to be there forever. It's going to outlive me, and that's kind of rewarding to see that. But how we're helping kids find their purpose and trying to connect them to roles and jobs and career paths outside of sport, I think that's the real thing that kind of wakes me up in the morning, because I went through those challenges. A lot of people on our board went through those challenges, and tons of kids in the future are going to go through those challenges. But it's important for us to kind of share those challenges with each other and that information, because that's the power in sharing information, that that's something you're learning from somebody else who'd been through it. So that's kind of how I've been giving back over the last few years.
I get the feeling what you just said is kind of the answer or for the question I'm about to give you, but let's do it anyway because it's
Yeah.
fascinating. But when you meet young athletes who are just trying to make the team and get their homework done and pay for education and all the things that are in their heads, what are your message to them and to those that are watching?
Yeah, so I mean, I say my message is, use your time as a student athlete or playing sports. Use it intentionally to pursue your purpose, right? So again, for me, like the challenge was like, and I was always good in school. Like I always had good marks, and I always did what I had that was required of me to play basketball. But at the end of the day, when I graduated school with my business degree and I was done playing basketball, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Right. So it's like it's real easy for you to follow a curriculum and put the work in that you need to do what you have to do or do what's required of you to get to that end goal. At the end of the day, if you don't have your purpose of what drives you, you're still not going to have a game plan. So, I guess my advice would be, try to find your purpose as soon as you can. And your purpose is going to change and you're going to pivot and you're going to adjust. That's normal. But I say is, identify what your purpose is and then use your time as a student athlete to be intentional every single day to work towards that purpose. So, that's kind of my advice because, your time is going to be very limited as a student athlete. So for me, once, I've connected with Bruce Finney and some of the mentors, and once they told me like, network and do all this, I've used my time as student athlete and I still use my time now very intentionally on driving my purpose. And, I ended up as a recruiter who does help work in nonprofit sector and all that kind of stuff. But I wish when I look back that I would have been using my time a little bit more intentional. Like I would have been going to every networking event from first year to fifth year, and I would have been volunteering more often. I would have been using my time more intentionally. So I guess my advice is, really search for your purpose. And then once you have your purpose, be intentional with every action that you do every single day through a student athlete to chase that purpose. And then once sport is not there, and once sport is done, then at least you're progressively chasing your purpose at the same time as progressively chasing your career in sport. So that would be my advice.
So good. Wow, that is an excellent interview. So good.